someone who has not scrubbed Bill's references from his Twitter bio. I call it Twitter. Twitter bio. Sal Capaccio with us now on the West Her hotline.
Sal, doesn't that seem kind of like a thing that guys get around to doing when it starts to get really adversarial with their team? It just seems a bit preemptive by Cook, unless the Bills have already smacked him around or something and told him we're not doing what you want, or which we talked this through earlier on our show. It'd be very early in the going for that to have happened already. I know anything can happen, and it probably is meaningless, but largely it often is. I was kind of surprised to see we already escalated to I'm scrubbing social media.
Yeah, as you guys know, I've tried for many years to not read much into those kinds of behaviors because it's just a different world that, people of a different generation live in than I grew up in or that you do, but we also know we have to pay attention to it, right? It's a weird line to walk for someone like me, which is, I'm the reporter. I have to pay attention to that, and it could mean something. At the same time, sometimes it means nothing. I remember a couple of years ago when Stefon Diggs had done that, and then someone pointed out to me, well, he actually does that every year because he's into fashion and everything, and he just kind of
changes
reloads his page, right?
Right.
So, okay.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's just something that, but in this case, I do think there's a trail of breadcrumbs to lead you to believe that there's something being said with all these actions, right? And whether he's tweeting it specifically and putting the 100 emojis above someone who says, obviously he's worth, $15 million a year, or him pinning the Instagram live comment, or now, him scrubbing it. I also think he's in a unique spot here because it seems like his brother is someone that he has been kind of an advocate for him in his ear and kind of been really, I'm not going to say pushing this, but he's been at the forefront of it, right? And now, and this is a guy that played in the league. He went through his own contract situations, and he said what he said after in the AFC Championship game, tweeted about 20 mil. Now here's James doing what he does. I wonder how much of this is maybe not even him. I'm not saying he's not posting it, or, hey, this is the advice he's getting, I guess you'd say. You know
right,
what I mean?
like somebody's suggesting do these things. These are some things you can do to sort of like push the conversation forward, get it rolling.
Yes.
How would you...
That's exactly what I think, by the way.
Okay. Tough question to answer for any of us. I don't know how much I would appreciate you asking me this question. How aware of any of this do you think the Bills are? And I don't know, are they maybe like you? Like, I got to pay attention to it because it's part of my job, but maybe it doesn't mean anything. Like, I don't know. Like, Cook already drawing a line in the sand seems like, to me, it wouldn't go over great with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. Like, can we just calm down here? Why are we already at, like, wherever we're at here, like DEFCON 1? Maybe 1 is too strong. Why are we at DEFCON 3 already? Like, it's only a couple weeks after the season ended.
Yeah, it's interesting because, first of all, to answer the first part, how aware? Extremely. I would say this. Let's remember, the reason why the Bills were able to trade for Stefon Diggs is because he initially tweeted time for a change, and someone in the Bills organization said, hey, look at that tweet from that guy in Minnesota, right?
Okay, right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
they're on top of
Good
these
point.
things. Like, this is their own player. Like, they know what's going on. There's literally someone in charge in that building, someone in charge of looking at all of this stuff for other teams, let alone their own. They're very aware. They understand it. They know the questions are coming. We're going to talk to Brandon Beane in a little over a week. We'll be at the Combine. He's going to speak on Tuesday the 25th at 2 p.m. I'm quite sure this very thing is going to come up very, very quickly, if not the first question out of the gate to Brandon Beane. He's going to be prepped on it. He's going to understand what's going on. Now, that being said, it's also different of the Stefon Diggs example I just gave because the Bills have control here, right? Like, yep, they're aware, and I'm sure I agree with you, Bulldog. Like, I'm sure they don't love it. There's no doubt. They also know that it's part of the business here sometimes, that things like this kind of happen sometimes. So, my thought is they've been at this long enough where Brandon Beane's probably not in some sort of panic mode somewhere. He might not like that it's happening, but he also isn't going to suddenly disrupt his own process of what he had planned on how to go about this.
Yeah, I think, just again, it's the move or a move that a player can make. Mike Giannitti of Spot Track yesterday made a point, Sal, that Cook is kind of in his own tier right now for timing for running backs. A lot of older guys got paid last year. There are younger ones, and he stands out as somebody who's due some sort of a raise or an extension, and that just adds to the logic that just I'm getting it out there. I'm pushing this. And it might not. He and the Bills might have a laugh about it. Like I think to say that they're not phased is easily correct, probably. So Cook is in an interesting spot. He's got some leverage, and ultimately, what is he worth? I bet the Bills think he's quite valuable, but I don't. I think $15 million a year is crazy. So they come in between, and everybody's happy in the end.
Yeah, that's probably some sort of likely outcome in some way, shape, or form. And I say likely for me because it's just not something the Bills have ever been in business of under Brandon Beane, which is getting it to a point where it becomes super contentious.
Yeah,
they've been so good at heading these kinds of things off. The only one we have an example of is Jordan Poyer, who missed some OTAs. And then the year that Jordan Poyer's contract expired, they basically said, go see what else is out there. And that was a bit I know he didn't love that, but he went out and he saw what was out there and didn't like it and came back to the Bills. Really, we haven't had much else in the line of these contracts. They don't like these kinds of things to get to that point. So I don't think in this case that they're going to let it get there, but I don't exactly know how, you resolve it either. So we'll see. I find it also fascinating, like, what have the conversations been like? I did hear you guys ask a little while ago. You could talk to agents all the time. You just can't execute the actual extension until the new league year begins after your third year, so going into your fourth. So then they could do something like that. They could even agree on it now if they want or whatever. But I do wonder what those conversations have been like, and is James Cook doing this because he's received word of, hey, we're not going to pay you that? But if that's the case, what is he doing? He's not marketing himself to other teams. He's not a free agent, right? I mean, the Bills still have control. So he could just be shouting it from the rooftop just so everybody knows. That's fine. Or is he just doing it because he knows, hey, it's my turn to get paid, and I just want to let everybody know what I'm worth. And guess what? We're going to try and make this work, and this is what I want.
Right. Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline. Mike Shope and the Bulldog here. The state of the tight end position up at WGR550.com. This is one position where I think I'm just not thinking about it at all. That Knox is still here. It's McDermott's comments after the season that you pointed out to me after I was sort of wondering if there might be a change there. Probably not. Kincaid and his health, or maybe better put, strength at the end of the season became a topic. And as you mentioned on Twitter, at least, if not in the article, the Bills reportedly are making a change at their strength and conditioning coach position, Eric Ciano, who's been there for more than a decade. So maybe these two topics are connected here, Sal, the tight ends and this news today.
I think it could be. I don't know exactly the reason for the reported change. It has not been confirmed to me or by the Bills specifically. But Ryan O'Halloran is reporting it from the Buffalo News that they're moving on from Eric Ciano. And my speculation is, I think, okay, why? They actually were one of the healthier teams in the league.
Yeah.
Really, for the most of Sean McDermott's time here, they have been. Last year and the year before, they were a little bit not as much in that regard, as you guys know. So what else could it be? And I think about the comment that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott made about Kincaid and play strength, and is that something? Maybe there wasn't the right kind of plan. He also was dealing with some injuries this year, and maybe there's something there. You think about what they said about Keon Coleman and coming back from his injury. He wasn't the same player. He wasn't as physical enough. Is there something there? I'm just trying to tie in any specifics that could lead to that, because I do think those kinds of things matter when you're talking about how detail-oriented an organization is, especially Sean McDermott is, especially in an area like this.
Dwayne Carter was another guy that came up during the week as we're talking about, fortifying the defensive line and the draft and all this. And there's a third-round pick who I thought was starting to show some promise, Sal. One of the games I really noticed him in, I think, was the Houston game, which was, I know, a loss, but still, I thought he was starting to break through and maybe earn a little more playing time. Then he got hurt and was never really heard from again, even though he returned to practice. Like, he didn't dress for the championship game. So maybe there's a thing there about guys getting healthier but not getting back to being able to perform at the level they were before they got hurt.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll find out again if we when we meet with Sean and Brandon, both at the Combine in a week and a half or so, to see if there's anything more on this. But in the meantime, look, they really like Dalton Kincaid. I think it goes without saying. I do think that, obviously, the comments matter, play strength, and getting him a little stronger, be able to withstand the rigors of the position. That's also going to help in his blocking. But he's a guy going into his third year. And typically in this regime, a lot of times that jump is made from year 2 to year 3 with a lot of guys. You can go down the list where many of that's happened for in the past. He did not have the kind of production last year I think a lot of people anticipated, me included. He was part of this everybody eats mentality. I also think that if you're going to have a tight end as talented as him and draft him in the first round, maybe you should scheme things up a little bit more to highlight him a little bit. Maybe that's part of it. So I think there's got to be a lot there. As far as Dawson Knox is concerned, there is one question, and that is his contract. And he is going to count $14+ million on the cap this year, guys. That's 7th most in the NFL. And anybody who looks from the outside in is going to say, okay, come on, like that is a lot for Dawson Knox. And that I'm not here to argue that point, but it would be very cost prohibitive to move on from him. They also very much love him, as I pointed out their comments at the end of the year. Like, this was the guy that they were highlighting, like, we need guys like this. He was a big part of what we do here in this organization. So the only way you can really maneuver that number to me after I look at his contract is maybe if you give him an extension and you push some of that money down the road. Because otherwise, unless he takes a straight up pay cut, it's tough to do, and he's going to be on the hook here for 14, and I think even at more than that next year. So that's the only question with Knox, and maybe they are willing to just play like that because Kincaid is on a rookie deal, and if they look at it as a position as a whole, then you're like, okay, well, it's really not that much if you divide up the two numbers or add them up between the two guys we're using.
I think maybe the most puzzling thing about Kincaid this year was the number of times Allen missed him. And it was different than maybe any other Bills player. I don't see, in my mind's eye, I don't see Allen missing Coleman. I see Coleman just not catching the ball. Like he's not open or something. But several times here, Kincaid was open and the pass was just not there. And I don't think Allen needs to be absolved of blame for everything. But, that's kind of weird. So, his season high in yards was 53. In 2 seasons, 34 games, he has 5 touchdowns. I believe you when you say you think there's every reason to think the Bills are like high on him still. What can they do about this? Like in your opinion, what would you say? Usage or like does he need to play more than 55% of snaps to get to a point where it's not that it has to justify the pick, but that he can become an impact player, which he really hasn't been?
Yeah, I think obviously part of the snaps is he missed time this year. I mean, the reason why his snaps were down is because he wasn't healthy enough to play full games or even missing games. When he was even dressed in some games, I don't think they wanted to use him quite as much as they probably initially planned. And that's where I'll say I think that's why they fall back on Dawson Knox and say, I think they feel fortunate they had Dawson Knox this year. Now, he only had 22 catches, again, for a second straight year, which is odd. 2 straight years of exactly 22 catches. That's not a lot. But I think that they felt comfortable having him on the field, and that's where you get those comments from. And as far as Kincaid and getting more usage, I think that's got to come down to some of Joe Brady. Again, I'm going to go back to you drafted him in the first round. Now, part of it was they're going to play a lot of 12 personnel. They're gonna run a lot of 2 tight end sets. That was with Ken Dorsey. It didn't really materialize. Part of that was Dawson's injury, in 2023. Then you get to this year, and it's everybody eats. It's kind of a change in philosophy. But if you really believe you have this player on your team that can be the kind of matchup that you envisioned him to be when you drafted him in the first round, I think you have to create ways to be able to get him the ball in those matchups. And if that goes a little bit against your everybody eats because he's the guy eating the most, then I think so be it. But I do think that that's got to be a part of it. And then, for him, sure, I'm going to take what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott said and say, that's probably true, that maybe he has to be a little bigger and stronger. And maybe when he's on the field, guys, teams don't respect him as a blocker because he doesn't have the playing strength. And they say, hey, if he can be a respectable blocker, I'm not saying he's bad at it, but get better at it, and teams know that when he's on the field, we can do either. That really allows us to get more mismatches.
Yeah. Sal, what about the rest of the position? Obviously, Knox and Kincaid are the headliners, but, Quentin Morris has had a pretty entrenched role. And then beyond that, like what else is in the pipeline here, outside of what could happen in free agency or the draft?
Yeah, so Quentin Morris is actually going to be a restricted free agent. So that's a bit of a tough one when you talk about restricted free agents, because the only way to retain his rights are to offer him the minimum qualifying tender, which in his case they would, I'm sure, be a right of first refusal. They're not going to use a first or second round tender on him. Well, that's still going to be projected over $3 million this year. Are the Bills willing to pay Quentin Morris $3 million? I mean, look, they did pay Saran Neal a lot of money to be a core special teamer, and he is the second highest snap usage guy in special teams, and typically he's right up there. So would I totally dismiss it? No, but I still think that's pretty pricey. So my guess is they either, before that has to run its course, they both agree, let's just not do that. Let's just bring you back on another 1 or 2 year deal at a lesser price. That's fine. Or they don't do it. Excuse me. He goes to unrestricted free agency. He sees what's out there. Is there a team that gives him another, a bigger role with more money, or does he come back to the Bills? So that's what's got to play there. Zach Davidson, we all saw the hands. He's a phenomenal athlete. He does not have the body to be an inline blocking tight end. He is really just a Dalton Kincaid kind of backup replacement if something happens, or even Dawson Knox. Obviously, Dawson a better blocker. But, that's really what he is on the practice squad, and that's probably where he remains this year, but he'll fight for a spot. He doesn't really offer any special teams value if you have to use him there. That's why Quentin Morris is ahead of him on the depth chart, but he did re-sign. He'll come back and fight for a spot. And then they do have a young man they signed who is a dual-threat quarterback in college named Armani Rogers. I don't know if you guys remember this guy. He was a 2022 undrafted free agent by the Washington Commanders, and he transitions to tight end in the NFL. And he actually played a little bit, and then I think there was an injury or something, and he was out. They went on his way, and he was with both the Eagles and Falcons. I looked last year in the practice squad, never saw any time, and the Bills signed him to come to camp as a tight end. But he was, where did he play? I think it was UNLV. Maybe I have to look this back up again. But he was a really good dual threat tight end, quarterback in college, and now he's a tight end.
Armani Rogers. Vegas is right.
Yep.
All right, Sal, offensive line is next.
Yeah, and real quick, guys, it'll be easy. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sal. He's Sam Rogers' son. He was born in Buffalo.
Right, I did read that.
Oh, wow, that's great. I did not know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I saw a reference to that at some point within the last couple of weeks, and then that's interesting. The Bills have a guy that's Sam Rogers' kid on the team.
Big Sam Rogers fan here.
Yeah,
love that guy.
You know what? He grew up in L.A., so he didn't go to high school here. But, yeah, he was born in 1997 in Buffalo, New York. I like that. NFL Sam Rogers. I remember Sam Rogers. Good call there. Thank you for that. I'll include that now, and maybe I'll even edit the article to include that. So, real quick, offensive line. Typically, the longest article I write every year, and then I say to the Bills, is offensive line because, A, there's just a lot of guys, and B, there's several who have contractual situations we have to kind of look at. That's not happening this year. This will be one of the shorter articles I've ever written on offensive line, maybe the shortest ever, because, yes, there are a lot of names, and I'll go through them, but, guys, everybody's under contract except for Will Clapp, who's a veteran guard, and Tommy Doyle, whom, his future is up in the air because he hasn't played in 2 years. That's it.
I think he retired.
Everybody else is under contract.
I think Doyle retired.
He did not. There was a report.
Sorry.
There was a report.
All right.
Erroneous report.
Thank you, Sal. Sorry to throw that on you. I know what's going on with Tommy Doyle. What do you know?
No, it's okay. I don't want to call anybody out specifically.
Okay,
I will. It was on ESPN Classic.
Yeah, I just wish people would be a little bit more thoughtful and thorough. I mean, this is a young man's career. And I will tell you specifically that I know that Tommy Doyle has not retired.
Okay.
Now, that does not mean that he won't retire or that he isn't pondering his future, but I can safely tell you here that has not happened yet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 starters, then how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other guys. 12 total players under contract right now, 2 who are unrestricted free agents, Clapp and Doyle.
Okay. Thank you, Sal. We'll not talk again for a while, so have a great trip, a great break, and hopefully your partner on Saturday in the 9th annual February Fixed Draft comes through for you.
Thank you. You have a great break as well. Have a great trip. I know you're going to be away. The next time I talk to you guys, I'll be in Indianapolis, and it's literally going to be on the fly. Sean McDermott speaking to the media on Monday the 24th. So we'll carry that, and then I'll join you guys right after that. I'm really going to get off. We're going on a cruise. I'll get off the boat in Fort Lauderdale and literally fly to Indianapolis for the Combine. So it'll be a whirlwind. And as far as the draft is concerned, we are debating. We have the number 1 pick, and my buddy Chris did text me, and he made a suggestion, and I said, I don't know if I like that. Let's go this way. So maybe there are a couple surprises.
Okay. We'll find out. I'll be appearing on the WGR morning show, Jeremy and Joe, I believe it's called, tomorrow to preview this draft.
I love it.
All right, safe travels, man. Thanks for this, Sal.
You got it, guys. Thank you. Have a great weekend and week.
That's our dude.